Today's daf is daf Kuf Vav and Sanhedrin is learning for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Sun Batzar Shivya. We're about almost halfway down the page. There's a parentheses. There's one line on the and that's in parentheses, and we will start a line above that. Vayisam Shalav Yomer. Again, we're talking about Bilam HaRasha. He lifted up his parable, meaning he began to his oratory. Vayomer, he said, "Oy mi yichya misumo el." Who can live from where God places him? What does that mean? So I'm going to say the parentheses. Normally we skip the parentheses. It's meant to be taken out, but I see Rashi seemed to have it. Woe to one who makes himself live by calling himself a god with the name of God. In other words, he proclaims himself to be a big shot, like Paro and Hiram. Rashi brings out another pshat. They make themselves nice in Olam Hazeh, and they throw off the Ola Torah. They fall off. They remove the yoke of Torah from their necks, and they fatten themselves up. They just have joys the pleasure of this world. And another pshat he brings down is Misuma El. Rashi. Well, it's really going on the next line. Rabbi Yochanan. It's back in the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan. Oy lo le'umash timsa b'shah shekadosh baruch hu. Woe unto the nation who, so to speak, is contending with Bnei Yisrael when Hashem is redeeming them. Mi matil ksuso, who puts down his garment? In other words, don't put your garment down between a lion and a lioness when they are mating. When they're going at it. Don't get involved. In other words, woe unto the person who, when a person is, when Hashem is redeeming his people and paying good back to the tzaddikim, woe unto the person who is contending with them at that time. And he goes on. Bilam says, "Vitzim miyad kitim," and the ships will come from Kitim. Kitim was a place. Kitim aynu makom sheshmo kach. Amarav Libun Aspin. That was the proper name of that place. Kitim was also called Libun Aspir. Ve'inu Asher, ve'inu Aver, and he will afflict Assyria and afflict Aver. What does that mean? Ad Ashur, Kotli Migdal. In other words, Rashi brings it down that he's talking about the Romans. The Romans will come and they will kill everybody as they overtake Assyria. After Assyria, Mishabde Shabude, they will simply enslave everybody, subdue everybody, but not kill them. Hineni Holech Lami, behold, I'm going to my nation. So apparently he has a nation, but I guess it means he's dying. He's going to be leaving. Bilam said to Balak, I will advise you, what this nation is going to do to you. Now says the Gemara, Amcha, Lamazevi, he should say what your nation is going to do to them. What does he mean that what this nation is going to do to you? It's like a person say, He's saying a klala about himself, but he doesn't want to use those words and say that he's going to be cursed. So he refers it to somebody else. Now, what do we mean over here? Why is he referring to somebody else? He's saying, let me tell you what this nation is going to do to you. So he is cursing Balak. So Rashi says two pshatim. One pshat is the bottom of the right side of Rashi, the inside. Rashi, the last Rashi says that he gave advice to Balak how to destroy Bnei Yisrael. Rashi says, Rashi says, 5 lines from the bottom of the right side, that he advised them how to lead Bnei Yisrael into immorality. And what does that mean? Because he did say what this nation is going to do to you. Bilam said he didn't want to say that Balak is low and needs my advice. So he said, Bnei Yisrael is low and needs my advice. That's one way to learn the pshat over here, because Gemara says, let me tell you what this nation is going to do to you. You really should say he was trying to advise him what you should do to Bnei Yisrael. So he says it in a way that, okay, we don't want to say what this nation is doing to you, but because he is giving the klal. He's saying, look what this nation is going to do to you. So what do you mean? He's told it. He's saying it as if what's going to happen to the Jews. He's telling Moloch, this is what they're going to do to you. So he's saying it openly. He's not giving the klala, saying the klala is going to happen to some other nation. He is saying it to you. So Rashi says, he's saying that Bnei Yisrael will be low and will need advice on how to subdue you. That's one way to learn it. In other words, you are high, you don't need advice, but they will need advice. That's one shot. Rashi on the top right, on the left side, and the third line says, Lashon is no. that really Bilam did say, let me tell you how to subdue the Jews. But the Pasuk says it differently. Hashem said it. Lishnachrina, Rashi says, the fourth line on the left side, Bilam really said, this is what's going to happen to the Jews. But the pasuk, Hashem changed the pasuk to say this is what's going to happen to you. But Bnei Yisrael will eventually defeat you, will defeat Balak, Melech Moab, will defeat Moab and Midian. Amar of the pasuk said that. Amar lahem. So what advice did he actually give Bilam? What advice did Bilam give to Balak to hurt the Jews? Their God, the God of the Jews, hates immorality. But they do like fine things. A lot of Jews are fine schmeckers. They like fancy cars, fancy linen, fancy clothes. Come and I will give you advice. I will give advice. Make for them tents made of, where they can show their wares. Think of it as a flea market, where they have their wares, their linens hanging out there. Boshim and Zonos, and have it employed by prostitutes. Sakena, the older ones, the older prostitutes will be outside. And the younger, prettier ones will be inside. V'imkulem kleipisht, and sell them linen clothes, and this way you'll entice them to come in because they want linens, and eventually you'll lead them to immorality. Awesome Klom, he made nice tents with these linens. Mehar Shelag ad Beis Hashemus, from that place, the nicest linens they could find from Har Shelag, that place. It's called Sneer Rashes ad Beis Hashemus. Boshim ben Zonos, and he had it employed by prostitutes. The older prostitutes were outside, the younger ones were inside. When the Jews came and they had, stands there for hamburgers and hot dogs and things, and they were eating and drinking the smechen, and they were happy. And they went out to browse around in the market. Omer Sloskena, the elderly prostitutes outside, said to him, don't you want some nice linen garments? Sakena Omer Slo B'Shabbat, the older ones outside, told them what the regular price was, $20 a piece. The Alda Omer Slo Pachas, and the inside one said, no, I can give you a discount. It's $15 inside. In other words, she would give them a discount to entice them to go inside. They did this 2-3 times. Then the younger one would say, listen, you're like family over here. Come, sit down. Shev, sit down. Pick whatever you like. And she had some nice jugs of fancy wine. It wasn't also that the Isser of Yain Nachri, Yain Akum, was only instituted later on. So you want some wine? Would you like a drink of wine? Once he drank the strong wine, Borbo, his passions were inflamed. Ashmili, please submit to me. In other words, he wanted to cohabit with her. She took out her yozel, her little idol, from inside, and from inside her lap or whatever. Amrlo, avod lezeb, worship this. Amrlo, hello Yudiana, don't you know I'm a Jew? I got this. I got a Magen David on my necklace here. Hello Yudiana, I'm a Jew. Amrlo, machmas, what do you care? All we're asking you is elapir. All we're asking you is to defecate in front of this little idol. And he figured that's not worshiping. That's actually the way you worship the Peor gods. I'm not gonna submit to you until you repudiate the Torah of Moshe, Rabcha, your master, your teacher. Shnemar, Hema Bo Baal Peor, they came to Baal Peor, V'nozru Leboshes, and they strayed away, and for shame. When they loved the idol so much, they became detestable themselves. So that's how Bilam's advice to Balak really took effect, and they started. The pasuk says they started prostituting themselves with these goyim, and 24,000 of them were killed. Yisrael stayed in Shittim. That's where they dwell. They camped there. So that was the name. The name of the place was called Shittim. They were osake with silly things, with stupid things. Vatikren la'am lezivchei elim, and they called the nation to lezivchei elim, to the slaughtering, to the sacrifices of their gods. What is that lashon of Vatikren la'am? Reb Elazar Omer arumos pagu b'hen. Vatikrena means that it's as if to say that they were naked. They called them naked. They enticed them by standing naked there. That's Vatikra. They called them that way. But Shuomer Shinasukum Bar Keren. Vatikra is a lotion of it happened like a Balkari who ejaculated, and when they saw these girls, they ejaculated right there, and that caused them obviously to go into this. My lotion Rafidim. Rafidim is not mentioned in this fashion, but since we have Machlokes or Blezman Yeshua, whether the lotion means literal or does it mean that that has some different meaning there. That was the name of the place, just like Shittim was the name of the place, Rafidim was the name of the place. Rabbi Elazar takes it literally, that was the name of the place, just like by Shittim. And the Rafidim was also in this. Shumar, Sharipu Atzma Divrei Torah, they weakened themselves from Divrei Torah, Shnemar, Leif Noas El Banim, Mirfin Yadayim. Because they were weak in learning, they didn't admonish and rebuke and teach their kids properly to follow the Torah. Amar B'Yochanan, Kamakum Shnemar Vayeshev, whenever the pasuk is Vayeshev Ena Lashon Tsar, refers to troubles, suffering, something bad happening. Shnemar Vayeshev Yisrael B'Shittim. They say they camped in Shittim by Yachalem Liznos Benasov, and they started to prostitute with the Benasov. Vayeshev Yaakov Eretz Migurei Aviv, Eretz Canaan, and then what happened? That story Vayavei Yosef has to bear some and that caused the whole story when Yosef started telling his father about the evil that their brothers were doing, and that started the whole process of him being sold, etc. Then it takes out the Nemar, the Gura takes that out. Vayeshev Yisrael Beretz Goshen. All these things are when it's Vayeshev, it's some sort of trouble. Vayikru Yisrael Lomos. That's when he died. Vayeshev Yehuda Yisrael Betach. Yehuda and Yisrael dwelled in surety, in other words, safety. Each person under his vine, under his fig tree. Vayokam Hashem Satan l'Shlomo. Hashem set up an adversary for Shlomo, who is Eres Hadara Adomi, Mizera HaMelech, who be'edom. Okay, that's the all these lashons where it says Vayeshev, something bad is going to happen. Something bad happened there, or indicated some sort of trouble. Going back to Bilam, Vesmalche Midian Hagu, they killed the kings of Midian, Al Chaleim on their. We're discussing what we mean Hargu and Al Chaleim on their dead bodies. And then it says that's Bilam ben Bor Hagu B'charav, and they killed Bilam when they came to destroy Midian. They also killed Bilam over there. But that's Bilam ben Bor Hagu B'charav. They killed him by the sword. They decapitated him. Bilam, my boy, what was Bilam doing there now? What was he doing there with the Midian? He came to collect. He wanted to get the schar. After all, his advice helped to kill 24,000 Jews. He wanted to come to collect. What do you learn from here? Get paid up front. That's what I said. Get paid up front. When you try to get, the usual thing is, we'll give you half now and half after the job is completed, right? But he apparently gave them credit. So when you come to collect from the mafia, coming for kill the job, why should they pay him? They just killed him. That's what happened. So they didn't kill him, but Bnei Israel killed him. But that's what he was doing there.
They did bring him things before.
Yeah, maybe he gave him gifts. He gave him gifts. He says, "I'll give you gifts and I'll give you this and all that." But it wasn't enough. Like maybe that's like half up front and half later on. That's where the mafia got it from, right? Yeah. All right. Amar Marzutra, Bartuvia, Amarav. People say, Gamla, Uzlin Boy Karni, when a camel goes and he wants horns, he says, I'd like horns, Udne Dehavilegzism, they also cut off his ears. In other words, you want something more, we'll give you something less. We'll detract. That's Bilam ben Bor. Now the Pasuk in Yeshua says, it's Bilam ben Bor HaKosen. Bilam ben Bor was called the sorcerer. It says Kosim was only a sorcerer. Navi was actually a real prophet. He had great prophecy, as we saw. Amar B'Yochanan, B'tchila Navi, at the beginning he was a Navi. L'Besov, later on, after he degraded himself by cursing the Jews, he became simply a sorcerer. He lost his ability for prophecy. People say, Misagni V'Shilti Havoi, she was with princes and rulers, Eisen L'Gavri Nagri. Now she became a prostitute, or she cohabited with sailors or carpenters. Another Pshat in Rashi, it's either Nagdi or Nagri. Nagar is like a carpenter. It could also be that for sailors, people who pull the ropes. What is the lashon of Hargum Bnei Israel b'charav el chalehem? Right, we just quoted that pasuk. They quoted the pasuk we had before. The pasuk in Bamidbar says Esmalcha Midyan Hagu al chalehem. Pasuk in Yeshua says Hargum Bnei Israel b'charav el chalehem, to their dead bodies. Amrav shekayma bo arba misos. They killed them 4 ways. In other words, all 4 misos bezdin were performed on him. Hargum Bnei Yisrael b'charav el chaleim. What does that mean? Skila streif ergen chenek. Rashi explains like this. Take out the top Rashi on the right side. Misos harbe mashme shetalu. First, they hung him up. They crucified him. They tziso eish tachas atzleiv. And then they put a fire. They lit a big fire, bonfire underneath the crucifixion. V'chatchu rosho. And then they cut off his head. So, right, they cut off his head. So they hung him up. They cut off his head. Nafal tachos. He fell into the fire. Right. When they hung him up, that's asphyxiation, right? They strangled him to death. Chatichas harosh, that's herring. That's decapitation. Kshenaf when he fell into the ground, that's skila, the falling itself. Remember, skila is preceded by they throw him off from 2 stories. That's skila. Kshenaf when he fell into the fire, hanas reifa. So they get all 4 things were done on him. Okay. Amalei umina l'Rav Chanina, a heretic said to Rav Chanina, Nishmi l'cha Bilam bar Kama. How old was Bilam when he died? We hear a lot about Bahamas. Amalei Michtal, if it's not written down in the pasuk, but since the pasuk says Anshe Damir, a famous pasuk, we say Anshe Damir, men of blood and deceit, Lo Yachzimim, will not live out half their days. So half normal lifespan was 70 years old. So Bar Tlasin v'Tlashanan or Bar Tlasin v'Arbi must have been 33 or 34. We'll have another medrash about that later on the dot, but he must have been 33 or 34 because since he was an evil person, he couldn't have lived half his life. Amalei Shapir Kamer, you're right. The Didi Chazili Pinkase de Bilam. I saw a biography about Bilam. I saw there was a biography and it says about Tlasim Tlashan and Bilam that he was 33 years old. Bilam Chagir or Bilam the lame. We saw yesterday he was a lame person. Katam when he was killed by Yossi Pinchas Listah, by Pinchas the robber, he was leading the Jews at that time in battle. Rashi says he didn't kill himself, but he's considered like the leader is considered when they say that whatever it was, MacArthur or Rommel or whoever it was took this land, took that. It doesn't mean he himself did it. He did it as troops. So they killed him. So it says that he was 33 when he was killed by the Jews. Amalei Mar Brei Ravina Lebrei. Mar, the son of Ravina, said to his son Ravina, "Bekulo Tafis Lemedrish. Don't run to darshan about all these other people that we're talking about, Doa, Ganachi, Tofel, and Gechazi. Don't say bad things about them. Labarbe Bilam Marash, except for Bilam, the evil one, who caused so much trouble to the Jews. To come to the Mishkas Bay, Drosh Bay. As much as you can find bad about him, keep on darshaning. He for him it's a mitzvah to darshan what a Rasha he was. Except it says Doeg. When it comes to Doeg, who ratted on David Melech to Shaul. Except it says Doeg in one place, and in another place it says Doyug with 2 yuds. Hashem was sitting. The Doeg, and the Baruch Shalom was anxious, was worried. Maybe Doeg, who was a great Talmud Chacham, will still turn bad. After he actually turned bad, and he, so to speak, went off the derech. Amar Vai Shiyatza, woe that this one has gone out. Meaning Hashem was worried about him. Doeg, originally Hashem was Daega. He had Daega. He was worried. Doeg, Hashem was worried about him. And then unfortunately it did come to fruition. Hashem called him Doeg. That woe unto him. Amar Yitzchak Ma'idasiv. Matasal bara Gibor Chesed El Kolayom. Again, another pasuk in Tillim. Matasal, why are you praising yourself with evil? Hagibor, you strong person. Chesed El Kolayom. Doesn't God give you His mercy all day? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Doeg. Shem said to Doeg, Lo Gibor b'Torata. Aren't you mighty? Aren't you a warrior, a hero in Torah? He was a big Talmud Chacham. Matasal bara, what are you praising yourself with evil? What are you involved with evil? This that you did to David. Lo chesed el natu yalecha kol yom. Isn't the kindness of God spread out to you, stretched out to you all day? He told the Rasha, Doeg is now a Rasha. Hashem said to him, What are you telling my laws for? You're telling my laws, you're teaching Torah. When you come to the Parsha in the Torah that talks about murderers, Uparshat Nasape Lashon Hara, or the parsha that talks about speaking evil of others. Ma Tadorsh Bem. What are you darshan there? You're the big darshan, but look, Maratzim, you yourself did it. You were responsible for wiping out the city of Nov, etc. And you spoke Lashon Hara. Batisa Brisi alai picha, and you carried, so to speak, my covenant through your mouth. Amravami, ein Torah shadogel misaf l'chutz. It should be ein. My Gemara is missing the nun. I don't know what you have there. It says E, right? I don't know what you have there. And the new Gemara should probably have it in there. Ein Torah shadogel misaf l'chutz. In other words, he expounded great halachas. He was a great Talmud Chacham on the face of it, but it was only from his lips outward, meaning it didn't have effect on him inside. He wasn't really, his heart wasn't in it. Vayiru tzadikim, and the tzadikim saw Vayiro when they were afraid, but all of Yischaku, and then they laughed. But Chila Yiro, when they first saw him, right, they were afraid. Rashi says, "Betchila Yiro at tzadikim, hoyireim shal yimar masav shal dog." People should learn from him, shalav chatam matzliach, because he sinned after being a big Talmud Chacham, and he was matzliach. L'basov, at the end, when they saw his downfall, they laughed. Then they laughed. L'basov kshemeis b'chatziyam, when he died young, v'shav gemula barosho yischaku, then they'll be happy. Remember, it's like Ma'arich Siv, chel bola vayekienu. He swallowed riches and he spit them out, vomited them out. Mi bitno yorishenu, from his belly yorishenu was be cast out. Ki yishenu kale, Hashem will cast him out from his stomach. What does that mean? Amar David L'fnei Baruch Hu. Rabban Shalom, look what he's done. Yamastoik, he should be killed. Amar lo chel bola vayekienu. Right? He has consumed a lot of Torah. He had great riches, but he's going to wait. Give it some time. He's going to repudiate the learning and wait till he forgets his Torah, then he'll be taken care of, he'll be killed. Amar l'fanav, Hashem, David's return to Hakadosh Baruch Hu said, "Mi bitnu Yerushanu el," but don't wait. Hashem should cast him out now from his stomach. In other words, get rid of him right now. Rashi says on the right side, 10 lines from the bottom of the page. First, Hashem said, he's hamten at shetishkech terusa. Wait, tarasa. Amar l'fanav, al tamten lo. David said to Rabban Shalom, please don't wait. You should hurry it up and cause him to forget his Torah. It's like Ma'arich Siv, Gam el yitatzchol netzach. Hashem will destroy you forever. David. Let him at least come into the next world. No. Gam el yitatzchol netzach. Hashem should destroy him forever. Shouldn't have a share in the next world. Ma'arich Siv, Yachtecha v'yisachecha me'oel. Hashem will take you away and pluck you away from the Oel. Oel refers to the tent of Torah. V'sheresh me'eretz chaim sela. Again, another pasuk there in Tillim. And he will root you out, uproot you, me'eretz, from the land of living. Period. Let's learn. He had a lot of Torah. Doeg. Let's learn a piece of Gemara. Let him learn a halacha in the base medrash in his name. No, take him away and pluck you away. Let at least have children who are learned, rabbis. No, let him uproot him totally. That he'll have no. His progeny will also not be matzliach in Torah. Aye Sofer, where is the counter? Aye Shoka, where is the weigher? Aye Sofer Esmigdalim, who can count the towers? We'll see what that means. Aye Sofer, Kolos Torah. He knew all the letters in the Torah. He knew the Chaseros and the Yeseros. He knew every single thing, all the letters in the Torah. Where is he, this Doeg, who was once a great Talmud Chacham? Aye Shokel, who is the one who can weigh? Shokel Kol Kal V'Chomer Shabbatorah. He knew which Kal V'Chomers were valid and which ones weren't. Aye Darshan Kal V'Chomer. Aye Sofer Samigdalim. Where is the one who can count the towers? Shaya Sofer Shlosh Meos Halachas. He counted 300 different halachas, psukos, verified, halacha lemaisa, b'migdal, haporech b'aver. Famous case of a tower which is flying in the air, meaning it's not on the ground. Rashi brings down several pshat what this refers to, but the pshat he refers to that he prefers is the case of if you go in Eretzam, if you go into a Goyish land, which is Tamei D'Rabbanan, but you go in, so to speak, like in an airplane, in a helicopter, in a box, is there tumah there or not? Another pshat was that it could refer to sorcery. Another pshat is the lamed, which is the letter which has an upper crown as part of part of the very lamed itself, has an upper crown and it's bent over. That means migdal. That's the tower. What's the halacha about that? Rashi says, why is it tilted over and facing downwards, the lamed? Why is that? So he learns all these halachas, whether it's the halacha of the preferred shot is that we're talking about the tumah. If you go in a closed box in Eretz Amim, are you tameh? And where is this great Talmud Chacham? Amarav Abrameo's boy Doig had 400 different questions. But Migdal Perech Ba'av, just about that. One wasn't. They weren't able to post them. In other words, they were so learned that they had 400 different questions about this case of if you're in a tower, meaning in a closed box, and you're flying through the air, you're not standing on the ground, where you're not touching the dirt of Eretz Amim, about Tumah. Amar Rava, so Rava said, Rabu Salami boy, such a big deal to ask questions. You could ask a lot of questions, but how you can all ask a lot of questions. That doesn't mean that they were really from, that they really their heart was in it. And he brings this famous case. He had this in the Gemara and Brachas and elsewhere. B'shnei Rabbi Yehuda, in the years of Rabbi Yehuda, earlier Amora, Kula Tanai ben Azikin. All they learned was the Zikin. Only one of the 6 starim, which we're learning now in the Zikin Sanhedrin. They were all learning Vanan, Kamastina, and Tuva Buksin. And we learn even all the Masechtas, including Uksin at the end. And the Nesach is the Beshis. We learn all 6 starim. Uksin is the last. If you count in the Daf Yomi, there's 40 Masechtos that we learn. If you count all the Masechtas, though, that many of them only have Mishnayos, there's a total of 63. Uksin is the last of them. So he's saying we learn all 6 Sedras. And Rabbi Yehuda comes to this question, Isha Shekeves Shekov Sheves Shekeves Yerek B'Kedera, a woman who preserves vegetables in a pot, and the question is in tumah is transmitted to the stem, does the fruit become tummy or not? The Amila Zaysim Shekov Shem Tarfein, or olives that were preserved with their leaves. Is the leaves considered like a yada handle, so that if you were matame, the leaf is the fruit itself tummy or not? It comes to this question that the zaysim are tahor. Amar, when Rabbi Yehuda would come to that parsha, that halacha, Rashi says he can't find it exactly. B'chomas Rashi says that as Rashi says the zaysim shekefshim b'terfein isim mesechtas uksin, right? But and another one he says shekefshim b'chomas. He says he doesn't find that in Masechet Uksin. It's not an Uksin, but he says, well, Rabbi Yehuda didn't really learn Uksin, right? He says they were only Osek in Nezikin. And Rabbi Yehuda, but when he came to that halacha, he said, Havayis Rav Shmuel kachazinacha. Wow, this is such a complicated thing. I hear all the questions that Rav and Shmuel see here. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda was confused. He didn't know the halacha so well when it comes to these questions of tum and tara by preserves. He didn't know the halacha so well. Vanan kamasnin buksin plus our mesiftim. We have 13 different yeshivas who just learn on uksin that question. We are much more learned than Rabbi Yehuda. Still, Rabbi Yehuda shalaf masane v'asametra. When it came to praying for rain, he would just remove his shoe, and the rain, as if to say in mourning, he would remove his shoe as a sign of mourning and fasting. The rain would immediately come down. And we cry all day for rain and nobody listens. In other words, even though we learn more than them, they were holier than us. Because, right, Ela Kodesh Baruch Hu Liba Boy, famous line. Rachmana Liba Boy. Hashem wants our hearts, not simply that, right? Kodesh Baruch Hu Liba Boy, and Rashi, a little bit above on the left side about Rabbi Salam Boy, Lumoto Rachmana Liba Boy. Hashem wants our hearts, not enough the learning. In other words, he's saying we learn more than they learn, right? You can compare it to today, right? You can compare it to today. There are more people studying Torah today, probably than ever in history, right? And yet, are we on such a madrega that the earlier ones were? It's exactly what we have today. The Siva says, "Vashem yira leleva." Hashem sees the heart. So therefore, he says it's not a big deal. They knew how to learn a lot. They knew all the Seros, and they knew Kavachomers, and about just this topic, he could ask all kinds of questions. That doesn't mean much. They weren't able to learn. They weren't able to learn the teachings. What do you mean? It says, just quoted that pasuk. Where is the counter? Where is the weigher? Where's the one who counts all these towers? And they lose so much. And you said they didn't know how to learn teachings. They weren't able to paskin the shal. They had all kinds of questions, but they were never able to decide the halacha lemaisa. The Chsivit says, "Stod Hashem lireyav." Hashem teaches the secrets to those who fear Him, and they didn't have proper Yiras Shamayim.
Right?
Pardon? Reishis Chachma, right? Yeah, right. Amar Avami. So they had learning. It's like they said that there was some great once a Talmud from Lithuania or some great Talmud Chacham, and he knew how to learn, but he gave away. He didn't have any more Yiras Shamayim, so he would sit on Shabbos smoking a cigarette, learning the Gemara. Darshaning it all. He would smoke because he enjoyed the teaching. He enjoyed the brain. He was using his brain, but he had no Yiras Shamayim, so it was worthless. Amar Avami lo meisto agat shachar tamuda. He did not die until he forgot his Talmud. Like Hashem had that dialogue with David before. Hashem said he'll die when he loses his learning. Shneimar hu yamus. He will die beimus or without any wisdom. Because of his foolishness, he will make a mistake. He was mistaken because of his foolishness. Rav Ashi Omer Nitztara, he actually became a leper. Shneimar hitzmata kozan meka. You destroyed everyone who's strayed from you. Ksiv asam latzmitut. What is that lashon of itzmata? You destroy, you cut them down. Ksiv asam, it says latzmitut, right? When he says latzmitut, which means in perpetuity, that's talking about when the house is sold, right? And the land is sold, that stays in perpetuity. Lachalutin. Lachalutin means like absolutely, right? Absolutely in perpetuity. The Tanaim Bein Muskal Mukhadal people say he's making a real, A is equal to B is equal to C. Hitzmata goes on, you cut them down. What's Lashon of Hitzmata? Like Smitut, in perpetuity, a final, it's forever. And we explained that as Lachalutin. And we said, Ein Bein Muskal Mukhlat, because we're talking about a Mitzorah, use Lashon of Mukhlat. And the Targum of Smitut is Chalutin, and Smitut is similar to Itzmata. So we're saying this is a hint that he actually became a leper. The only difference between a muskar, a mitzora who is locked up for a period of time until he's declared. A mukhla means he's declared as a fully declared. He's 100% declared a mitzora, meaning he stays a mitzora until his simonim of saras have evaporated, and then he goes through a purification process, which involves days of cleanliness and mikvah and karbanos. What's between muskar and mukhlat? Ela prio prima, meaning let his hair grow wild and let him rent his garments. That's what we mean by when he's locked up, he doesn't have to do those things. But when he's mukhlat, he has to do those things. Three destroying angels of destruction came to Doeg. One caused him to forget his learning. One burnt him up. He burnt him up on the inside. And one that caused his ashes to be distributed, to be scattered in basic Knesset and Bet Medrash. Here's another example where afaro means dirt, but it really means ashes, right? Afar means dirt. Afar of afer, many times the words are interchanged. Right, like the ashes of the paraduma, right? And sometimes it could be called afar. Even though they were in, we would call that the same period of time in history, but they actually never saw one another. Doeg was at the days of Shaul. David. Now Shaul and David were also at the same time, but apparently Doeg was at the earlier time of Shaul, and Achitophel was the later part of David. They didn't live out half their lives. As we said before, how long did Bilam live? Right? We said Bilam, well, we don't know. He didn't live half his life, so he must have died at 33 or 34. Here also, Doeg and Achitophel did not live out half their time. That men of blood and deceit will not live out half their time. He only lived 34 years, slightly less than half a lifespan. 33. So 33, 34, and that's exactly what we said before about Bilam, that he probably did not live more than 33 or 34 years. Now, Now, this, when you say that he only lived 33 or 34 years, this does not fit in with what we saw yesterday, that Shlosha Hayu Ba'osa Eitzah.
When Moshe was.
When they decided they're going to drown
kill the
everybody,
kids.
right? We said before that Shlosha Hayu Ba'osa Eitzah, the piece we ended with yesterday, who were they? Bilam, Eov, and Yisro, right? So we said that Bilam was killed, right? Eventually he was killed. Yisro, Eov was suffered because of his because he was quiet, and Misurin and Yisro ran away. So his ran away from that whole thing and didn't want to have any part of it. So his children were zocha, his descendants were zocha to sit in Lishkas Agazas, right? But if you say Bilam was there at that time, how could he have been here at this time? So this disagrees. Rashi on the right side, still on this page near the top on the right side, this shita that we say over here that Bartosam said he was 33 years old, right? This shita that we did Bilam. Now at the bottom page we're talking about Dog and Achitofel, but how we made of Rav Chanina, he asked him how old he was. Rav Chanina said he must have been 33 or 34. This disagrees with Rav Samoy, who said before Shlosha Be'esa, they don't both agree, because if he was only 33 or 34, he couldn't have been both at this time and also at the earlier time of Shlosha Yibos or Eitzah. Back in the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom page. Originally, Achitofel was David's Rebbe. He learned from me. He called him his Rebbe, his teacher. Then later on, he called him his colleague, his friend. Then he called him his student. But it says, you a man of my estimation, of my value. Alufi, my teacher, the one known to me. Then he called him my friend. Together we took sweet counsel. The Beis Elokim, in the house of God, we walked together in company, hand in hand, so to speak. Then he calls Talmud. He says, Gam Ishlomi, my ally, my friend, Asher Batachti, that I trusted in him. Ochelachmi, who ate my bread. Higdalekev, he lifted up his shoe against me, so to his heel, meaning he trampled me. So that's what happened to Achitofel. That again, originally he was David's Rebbe, but later on he rebelled. Amar Yehuda, Amarav. La'olam al yavi adam atzmoli deni sayim. The person now we're going to talk about David HaMelech and the famous story with David and Bathsheba and how he was nichshel. Even though Gemara says, we'll say probably have it later on that Kolom or David sinned isn't really accurate, but still this wasn't no great honor either. What happened to him? That he certainly was nichshel. Rashi uses the lashon over here that lisaka aidei avera. So there was a sin here. Yeah, it's a machlokas, right? No, but the Gemara clearly says that it was a sin, but don't call it a sin. Amar Rabbi Rav.
Nathan said it was a sin.
Pardon?
Nathan Hanavi.
Right. He definitely sinned, but don't count it as a sin. Or that the question is, how far did he sin? Was she really Ashish Ish? Was she not Ashish Ish at the time of the Bia, etc.? That's the whole discussion here. A person shouldn't bring himself to be tested. Don't ask to be tested. Hashem didn't want to test him. Hashem knew that he could have been, but Hashem didn't want to test him. But he brought himself to be tested, and he stumbled. The Gemara says clearly, obviously he stumbled. Why do we say in the davening we say the God of Avram, the God of Yitzchak, the God of Yaakov? Why do you say the God of David? Amar, he said, Inu minsuli, right? They've been tested by me. I administered tests to them without them knowing it. And you have not been tested. Try and test me. Please test me too. Okay, I'll test you. You want to be tested? I'll test you. And I'll do something to you to lower the tenor, because to them I didn't even tell them they're going to be tested. They were tested unbeknownst to them, and they all passed. But I didn't tell them. I'm letting you know in advance. I'm going to test you with something involving immorality, right? Erva, sexual impropriety. He got up from his bed. He turned his night bed into his day bed. What does that mean? That a person has a small limb, referring to his genital. Misha masbio rav. If you satisfy it too much, it's hungry for more. Umarivo, but if you starve it, saveh, it's satisfied. Meaning, Rashi explains that David HaMelech thought that Rashi on the top on the right side. He had bia with his wives. He had 18 wives during the day. This way, he figured that he would pacify his passions by having a lot of bia. He won't think about it. In other words, he thought if he would have a lot of bia and have it with his wives, then he wouldn't have any more taiva. That's when he says he dafke even had bia during the day, presumably in a dark, closed room, etc., so that he should pacify his passions and he won't have a taiva. But it doesn't work that way. The more you feed it, the more it wants. By Salach Alagag, he went up on the mountain, Beis HaMelech, in the house of the king. V'yar Isha, he saw a woman rochetzes me'alagag, and he saw a woman washing from on top of the gag. V'isha tavas mod. She was very pretty. Massheva. What happened? Bathsheba v'kochayfa resha. She was shampooing her hair. Tusi chalsa, underneath the chalsa, Rashi says, is a beehive, kaveras. She was like underneath something. This kind of a hive, a beehive, whatever, was big and was shielding her. Also, the Sutton came. Idmile Ketzir appeared to him as a bird, and David shot at the bird. Pasik Bagira, he shot an arrow at the bird. Pasko Lechals, and that broke the beehive. I guess he missed, or the bird wasn't really there. It was just an illusion. Anyway, it broke the beehive. Igla, and she was exposed. V'chazia, and he saw her. Miyad Vayishlach David, when he saw her, his passion was aroused. Vayishlach David, and he sent Vayidosh Leisha, and he sought the woman. Vayomer, and he said, "Hello, Zeb, Bathsheba Baselim, isn't this Bathsheba the daughter of Eliam, Ashes Uri Achiti?" Vayishlach, that's the one. Vayishlach David Malachim Vayikocheha. He sent messengers and took her. Vatavo love. Vayishkavima. And why was she shampooing? She was shampooing because she was going to the mikveh. V'imiskadeshes b'tumasa. Rashi says, Osashah pasek tumah v'lo ba'alek. She wasn't a nida because she had gone to the mikveh. Vatashav el Besa, and she returned to her. Vatashav el Besa returned to her house. Find her siv. B'chanto libi, you tested my heart. Pakarat piktas laila, or pakarat piktas laila, a visit at night. Saraftani bal timsa, and you tried to purify me, but I was not found to be. Rashi says, you wanted to purify me like you purify gold. You didn't find me to be innocent, and as you tested me, and I failed the test. Zamosi bal yavar pi. What does that mean? I was like a zima. I did something bad, right? Something immoral, but I wish it wouldn't have come out of my mouth. What does that mean? Omar, he said, I wish that there would have been a muzzle over the mouth of the one who hates me, meaning the one who I hate, meaning he was talking about himself, but he didn't want to say it in that relation. He says, I wish there would have been a muzzle below Omar Kiyal Milsa. I shouldn't have said, please test me. He regretted what had happened. Darash Rav Meir said, to the conductor, the David Bashem Chasisi, I took refuge in God. Eich Tomel Nafshi. I said, how will they say about me? Nudi Harchem Tzipor, your mountain, meaning David was the king, like a mountain. People will say about me that a bird caused your mountain, your king to be moved just because of a bird. Please forgive me for that sin. People shouldn't say, Har Shabachem, your mountain, your king, was moved by a bird. To you alone I have sinned. I've done bad in your eyes. To be so that your words will be righteous. You will merit in your judgment. I'm strong enough. I could have restrained my inclination. Elamina, I figured the lolimba people shouldn't say people shouldn't say that the Eved bested his master. In other words, you put me to a test. You don't want to say that I won. Now that's a very simple explanation of what happened over here. Pardon?
It's your fault.
It's your fault, not mine. But he wanted to say no. He said he just did it, and I wanted to let you win, so to speak. But that's there's more to it than that. that he wasn't like that. That's what he says. Rashi says that however nitzcha ladana b'techachaso, so you don't want to say that. So that's, why I so to speak, I fell in. But the pshat really is that, had Hashem didn't want to test him, but he wanted to be tested, so he fell because he wanted to be tested. All right, we'll pick him here tomorrow. Mishem Darish Rava. We'll pick up the same discussion tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday. We have a little less time. Okay, good.
They call the Aver Katan thing, they call it halacha. If you didn't know the halacha about the Aver Katan.
Yeah, halacha, yeah. And the word halacha is used, it's like a saying,
Yeah. I mean, it's not always used that way. But
Right. Yeah, it's like offer, a lot of words are used interchangeably, right? It's a halacha Esav son of Yaakov, right? It says halacha. What do you mean? It's a psak halacha. He's saying that's the fact of life. It's more like that's a fact of life. And this is halacha also. It's a fact of life, that you don't.
You didn't know this.
Using it too much does not mean that you won't have a type. It just, more,
Interesting.
Yeah, that's right.